Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for our quick webinar. It's going to be quick tips for cost cutting. I'm Anna Masker. I am one of the leadership team members at ProfitLink. We do CFO advisory and crypto accounting for for tech and blockchain companies, as well as small to mid-sized professional service providers. We kind of act as an outsourced accounting and finance department for these companies, handling everything from financial modeling, forecasting, cash flow planning, as well as the tactical day-to-day stuff like accounting, closing the books, KPI reporting, and management reporting as well. Today we're going to talk about cost cutting. I'm sure many of you have already gone through some cost cutting measures to deal with this crisis. We're going to just talk about some other alternatives as well as some ones you probably already know. But the most important thing before we start into cost cutting, the most important thing is really having a plan. I don't think you can cost cut without knowing where you're going. So taking that look ahead is really important because you really need to forecast what changes are going to happen in your business so you know how extensive and how deep your cost cutting needs to be. So if you start slashing and burning, you could actually jeopardize the future of your business. So making sure you have different scenarios to plan for the future is really critical as well. So everyone, the natural place to start is with your profit and loss statement. And, a good exercise is to go through line by line, if you haven't done it already, at the detail level. If you're using a QuickBooks accounting system, there's a report called Expenses by Vendor Summary Report. This is a great report to tell you what you've spent with your vendors. You can do it over certain time periods, whether over the last couple of years, the last 18 months. You'll really get a good idea of how much you're spending with each vendor, which will give you some leverage for negotiations. From there, you can look at your critical vendors and how much you spend with them, like I said, and that's going to give you a launching point to have some good discussions. You also need to rank your vendors, not only on how much you spend with them, but also how critical they are for your business. So for example, if you have a large developer or you have a large subcontractor that represents a large portion of your business, or if you resell a product or service and you have that vendor as well, it's really important to know, like, who do you need to retain and who may be a little bit on the ancillary side. Before you start going into the actual cost cutting, I think understanding what you have with on your P&L and your expenses there, the next thing is to really think strategically about your cost cutting. We don't want to do a slash and burn, but there is a methodology that we use. And first of all, it's thinking back office before customer facing. You may have some high paid salaried people who are directly working with clients. You also have to think about client retention. So we like to start with back office expenses first. So that may be some administrative side, as well as, some of your overhead expenses that aren't necessarily going to impact the way your customer interacts with your company. So if you have people who have really good relationships with your clients, we have to think about figuring out how to keep them and keep the customer facing activities going for retention. The next thing is you want to look at each expense and ask, does it generate revenue? Does it protect my business? And is it critical to the business's operations? So running an expense through those different filters allows you to kind of start prioritizing what you need to keep and what you can get rid of. And this is one thing I think that a lot of people overlook, especially if you have multiple levels within your organization. You may have some people who are closest to work who know how to save money, but either are too afraid to speak up, have never been asked, or never been incented to help you find out ways that you can cut costs. We worked with a manufacturing company, and they were looking for some cost cutting. When you interviewed the actual people on the line, they came up with some amazing ideas on how to be more efficient, how to do more with less, and how to actually produce a better product. And when we asked them, why didn't you ever tell us this? They said they were never, asked, and they were afraid to rock the boat, or they didn't think that it was their place. Now's the time to go down to the lower levels and ask the people who are closest to the work what you can do better. And you can actually, there's some incentives in there as well to have them share in some of the cost savings or just bonuses as well. So now it's time to start cutting costs. And where do you start? You want to minimize, obviously, minimize the money going out. And cost cutting happens in waves. I think we've already passed wave 1, which is slash and burn large expenses. And this is looking at all capital expenditures. This is leasehold improvements. This is buying buildings. This is buying machinery, equipment. Those are pretty large cash outflows that we need to put on hold until we really have a better idea of what the recovery looks like. Then, of course, headcount reductions and furloughs. Those tend to be the first wave where a lot of non-essential, or I should say not essential, non-customer facing or ancillary people get reduced. Reducing outside services, looking at your consultant base, looking at service providers that you may not be utilizing fully should also be reduced. So that was wave 1. Wave 2 is really what we call sometimes looking under the couch cushions for some smaller savings. But when you take some of those smaller savings, some of them can add up significantly over the course of a year. So again, going back at a second tranche, looking at your P&L in detail, looking at things like your subscriptions and your monthly charges. Are you using all of your phone lines, your services? Do you have licenses for people who are no longer with your company? That's when you start going through your credit card statement and seeing all of these charges and going, really don't need that subscription to that service that we're not using or won't use in the future, at least for the foreseeable future. So that kind of $100 there, $50 there, here and there actually do add up to some significant six-figure, either 5 or 6-figure dollar amounts often in businesses, that have multiple employees. So be careful and look at some of those smaller expenses. And then wave 3 is really starting to get creative. I think this is where, we are right now. We're mid-April or late April, and we've been in this for about 5, 6, 7 weeks, those of us in the Northeast. So it's time to get creative. So, moving the remaining headcount, could you go from salary to hourly? Can you create incentive compensations that are really based on results? So your cash is matched with the actual results of the business. Negotiating your rent, whether that's abatement, deferral. We've seen people even getting out, being able to cancel their leases, which has been amazing. Talking about partial payments, using security deposits, figuring out ways with your landlord to tack, maybe I've heard of situations where landlords are giving people 2 months rent for free and then tacking those 2 months on the end of the lease. We've heard people using part of their security deposit to pay for partial rent. We've heard people negotiating half rent for 3 months, and then that also then gets tacked on to the end of the lease. It's there's some landlords want to keep your business. They want you to stay in business. They are in the business of keeping property, and we think that the industry is going to be hurting significantly with so many people working from home for such an extended period of time. So I think landlords are going to be very open to negotiation. So tap that if you possibly can. And if you've stepped away from controlling the checkbook for a while, it may be time to step back into that. Temporarily authorizing disbursements, reviewing credit card statements, not writing the checks, but knowing every disbursement that goes out before it goes out. It's surprising that some of these little expenses start going through. So when we do a lot of cash planning, cash forecasting with our clients, sometimes it's the first time that the CEO or our owner or president or founding partner has seen the daily transactions at such a granular level for some time. And so where you may take a first pass at your P&L for cost cutting, this second pass at that actual writing the checks for the that are going out is a real eye-opener for the owners. So step back temporarily into authorizing those disbursements and reviewing your credit card statements. Again, it might be small costs, it might be couch cushion costs, but like I said, they do add up very quickly. And then the next thing to do is start going back to those vendor reports you ran in that first step, vendor expenses by vendor summary, looking at and ranking your vendors and saying, okay, how many of these can I consolidate, which will give me better leverage and buying power from our vendors. So we also want to make sure you slow your cash outflow, and then that's when you start negotiating with vendors also to stretch payments along with the cutting of the costs. This gets more into cash planning. We have a separate webinar just on cash conservation strategies, but you can't talk about one without the other. So the other thing you can do is call your insurance broker and ask them to review your payroll and workman's comp insurance. There's new rebate. You may qualify for new ratings if you have people who are no longer who are getting paid but are not working, through whether you're using the PPP funds for that or not. There's a separate rating classification for those now, and you basically can reduce your workman's comp insurance. It might not be a tremendous amount depending on the industry you're in, but for some industries it can be really significant. Also reducing your headcount reduces your workman comp, reduces some of your liability insurances as well. So check with your insurance broker. You may be able to save some money in that area as well. And then, other cash management is like, talking to your bank or your mortgage company and requesting delays in loan payments, extensions of current lines of credit. We've heard of Amex deferring payments for a month. It's worth a shot to call your banker and your credit card company to see what they can do. Again, they want you to stay in business through this crisis, so a lot of them are willing to work with you. So that is really just a quick tip. That's what we said. We call it quick tips for cost cutting and also some cash management as well. If you need any help implementing these strategies, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us on our website, which is profitlink.com, and hello@profitlink.com will connect directly with me, as well as this is my extension below. So if you have any questions, if you need help implementing these strategies, if you need help forecasting the future or doing cash planning, don't hesitate to reach out and give us a call. Thanks so much.